Never underestimate an old lady who reads many books and is born in August. This is a response video to Olly of CriminOlly. Hi Booktube, this is Marilyn, Maya. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a response video. Olly from CriminOlly, who thought up Garbaugust, had a video where he has life lessons that he learned, 5 life lessons that he learned from reading trash. And I don't disagree with him. However, I have a different experience of reading trash than he does. I've never read many men's adventure books or things like that. So I thought I'd make a response video, not against what he said, but just with my own 2 cents. This is August, and I got this from a friend who remains anonymous, maybe because they called me an old lady, but it's really true, and it has like tea in it, and I read many books, and I was born in August. I think it's green because the birthstone of August is peridot, which is green. Let me just talk about Garbaugust. It's a month where Booktube is participating in this readathon from Olly of CriminOlly, where we read trash or garbage. At first I thought, well, I don't read trash, but then I was listening to a few of the hosts, and I'll have the hosts down below in the description box. But I thought I'd write my 5 life lessons that I've learned. And I don't know if I can be as articulate as Olly or Steve Donoghue, who was talking about trash and reading. But I'll just, I just can talk from my own experience. So the first thing I learned is that any reading, including trash, is better than not reading and is beneficial. So when I had children, I thought I'm going to read to them every night, and I picked up Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and every night I would try to read them a chapter, and they were like, oh, this is so boring, this is so boring, and I began to think it was boring, and it wasn't working. So the next time we went to a bookstore, I picked out, we were planning a trip for like years to Disneyland, but it was very expensive for us because I was a single parent at the time, and we were on a very tiny budget. But we did end up going. But what was even more fun than going was when I picked up this book about, it was a guidebook to Disneyland, and every night we would read where we were going, what theme, division, like there's different themes in Disneyland, Adventureland, and I can't remember all of them now, but they would get really excited when I started reading this book. So I thought, wow, I have to rethink this. And then another thing I did was, we would go to the mall. Mall was big in the 80s, right? And we went to the mall, and they wanted to play video games. But before I let them play video games, we would always visit a bookstore. And they would say, oh no, the bookstore, Walden Books again. I think it was Walden Books at the time. And I said, no, we have to spend time in the bookstore before I'm going to let you play video games. And what happened was, I made sure that I spent more time at the bookstore every week. And they finally, eventually, they found things that interested them. Even if it was a book of stickers or any kind of book that, grabbed their attention in the children's section or any other section. And eventually, I think that by watching me read and value books, they became, really readers. So then I became a teacher later on, and I realized that if you let a child if you tell a child, there's books in everything that you're interested in every subject that you're interested in, be it soccer, baseball, music, there are books that are going to make you happy, and you'll be able to become a reader. And with my daughter, she was a stubborn one, so it was a little harder. But when I moved to Minnesota so I can get my degree, we went to the library, and that was our big thing. They have wonderful libraries in Minnesota. And she came upon the Sweet Valley High series. That's how she got hooked. She got hooked on these two sisters, and she ended up reading every part of the series. They had Sweet Valley Elementary, Sweet Valley High, Sweet Valley College, whatever, it went on, and she read every single book. And through that, she was able to really go to college and become a reader. Okay, so my first lesson was that any kind of reading is better than not reading. So if you read trash, it's better than not reading at all. Okay, the second life lesson I learned is with every book, you can learn one thing that's interesting, and that would make it worthwhile. So in my case, I used to read Perry Mason books, and by Earle Stanley Gardner. And what did I learn from him? Well, a lot. But one thing that stuck out in my mind was that a hot shower is restorative after a night of investigating. And he would go into details about his hot shower and how he didn't sleep the whole night. But once he had to wake up, or he had to wake up in the middle of the night, he would take a hot shower, and then he was ready to go. So that was one thing I learned. If you think the Perry Mason books are trash, which I don't really, but it was a pulp book, and I have a book to prove it. Also, if you read the alphabet books by Sue Grafton, A is for alibi, B is for burglar, I was really into that in the 80s as well. And I learned from Sue Grafton that a woman doesn't need a man, and she can have an exciting life as an investigator and solve crimes. And also, if you're familiar with the books, her landlord made her when her house was burned down in one of the alphabet books. He made her a beautiful little studio. And I learned that a small place can be as good as a mansion if you feel comfortable in it. Then we go to the book Nora Ephron's Heartburn. I love that book, and I loved Nora Ephron. And in Heartburn, she talks about her disintegrating marriage. But after each chapter, there's a recipe. And I learned how to make what she called caramelized mush, which was a bread pudding that she got from a restaurant. So that was a lesson I learned. So every book, if you really look at it, you'll find one useful thing. I should have said useful thing. So, and that goes for trash too. Even if it's just what somebody is wearing, or, you'll find one useful thing. Okay, so number 3, and this is not as happy a thing. Sometimes you don't know you're reading trash until something is uncovered about the book or the author. And example is Go Ask Alice, which I don't think I read, but it turned out to be a phony, somebody making believe they were a teenage girl on drugs. I didn't read that book, but I do have one book, and it's called The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, and it's a motion picture too. But this book is trash, and trash in the way that I think trash is. And I'm going to go into that more deeply. But the reason I picked up this book is because it's supposedly about a woman with agoraphobia, which I suffer from. So I wanted to see, you know, how it was portrayed. And, you know, his name was A.J. Finn. And then all of a sudden, just like, what is that called? A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. I found out that there was a lot of trash going on in this book. I'm going to read you some of what is about this book. So, the A.J. Finn is really Dan Mallory. And so he's the author of the best-selling book, The Woman in the Window, under the pseudonym A.J. Finn. And he's admitted, and there's a lot of controversies around this author. First of all, he's admitted to lying about having brain cancer for years. And then there was like a New Yorker profile, accusing him of a long history of falsehoods around his professional history and health. And the New Yorker article was written by Ian Parker, and he lays out a history of Mallory fabricating stories of illness and death, including that he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. The article claims Mallory had repeatedly said he had cancer, including in an Oxford University application and a colleague while working at a publishing house in both London and New York. So he made headlines when his identity, because he used a pseudonym, was revealed during a heated auction for his debut novel, this one. It's about a woman with agoraphobia who starts spying on her new neighbors. Sounds like a good mystery. That's why I picked it up. I love mysteries. So, you know, he had accolades saying that from Stephen King, masterpiece of storytelling. No, that was Daily Express. Stephen King said it's unputdownable. But there was a book, Saving April, that was written 2 years before this book came out. And it was a little known book. Well, it did pretty well, but a lesser known book by Sarah A. Denzel. And it's released 2 years before Women in the Window, and first being available in an ebook format. So a lot of people online who wrote articles said that the similarities between the two books are overwhelming, both in their scope and in their nature, and clearly Finn took everything that he possibly could from Denzel's thriller to write his bestseller. So to me, this book is trash because it's plagiarizing somebody else's work, which is very hard to prove. I found out by doing a little research. It's hard to prove that in court because, you know, like they say, every story has been done before. But with the lying and the plagiarizing, no. I started reading this book before I knew anything about it. And he had the woman with agoraphobia be an alcoholic. And that was one of the ways that she was able to, you know, excuse me, be an unreliable character. You know, that was his way. But it's also really not a normal part of agoraphobia that you have to be an alcoholic. And I'm afraid when I read that, I couldn't go on with the book. I just couldn't go on with the book. Then I read, you know, all of this other stuff about him. So this is trash. I bought it new, paid full price. I haven't really thrown it out yet, but what I call trash is when, you know, as a memoir writer, I write memoir, and I'm a stickler about telling the truth as I remember it, as I know it. And when someone deliberately is telling a lie, stealing somebody else's work, or lying in a memoir, that really, to me, is trashy. So that's what I consider the worst kind of trash. But, you know, that's one thing I learned. Number 4 is a very simple thing that I learned, and that is that when I was growing up in the 50s, vintage or trash was cheap. And beside the library, there was, you went to a used bookstore, and for 10 or 15 cents, you can get a cheap or trashy book. And not all of them were trashy. In a used bookstore, you can really get something for 10 cents. So if you had $1, which was a lot of money even in the 60s, 1960, a record would cost, a vinyl record would be 99 cents. That was expensive. And if you can buy like 5, 6, 7 to 10 books, that was great. So in that case, I bought a lot of trash, though I didn't realize that I was reading trashy books. I enjoyed what I read, or I didn't. I also would I would really, if I really wanted a book, hardcovers were about $10 at that time. I would go into Manhattan, I lived in Brooklyn, and I would buy, a $10 book. Of course, that would come out of our, much needed pin money, or what we would call household money, for what we call housewives in those days. And I would not tell anybody because I had saved it up, or I was, cutting corners another way. Okay, so what is the 5th thing I learned? Now this is where I may go, I may not be, I don't know, some people, especially maybe Steve Donoghue, might not agree with me. But he talked about, and so did, I think it's James Vaughn, talked about self-help books being trash, all self-help books. And I was a big purveyor or buyer of self-help books all my life, most of my life, except recently, really. Since I joined BookTube, and even maybe 10 years before that, I realized that, not all self-help books are true. And even in the past, all self-help books weren't true. So I want to tell you, so this is my life lesson. Self-help books can be helpful, even if what they advise is unachievable and they say it's achievable, or even when it isn't, they say it's achievable, even if it's trash, if, and that's the big if it makes you feel better, if you're going through a hard time and it makes you feel better. Now I have a book here to show you how I believed everything in this book. Let me just tell you a story. It's called Letting Go, and it's a 12-week personal action program to overcome a broken heart by Dr. Zev Wanderer and by Tracy Cabot, who wrote self-help books around that time. Now I realize that not everything in this book is true or helpful. But when I read this, let me just tell you a little bit. See, I have 2 copies because I used to give them away. I thought this was like gold. Okay, so when I first got married, I moved to Hawaii. I was expecting my 4th child, and my husband decided that right when I gave birth, or actually he was doing it before, he was cheating on me. And we broke up right after my child was born, and I was suffering from postpartum depression. I had to go to a hospital for a few weeks, and I thought my heart was broken. I thought that was the reason that I was so depressed. So I found this book, and it had some good ideas in it. One was write a crime sheet. It says, if you can think clearly now for a little while, you'll realize it's about time you admitted your ex wasn't all you've built him out to be. There was always things you didn't like about him. He was too short, cheap, fat, bossy, thin, grouchy, hairy. Or about her, she was too fat, thin, extravagant, messy, argumentative, tall. And so basically you write down a crime sheet. And believe it or not, that made me feel better. However, there was also things in this book that do not do. And I have to say I did not do it. But it says here, if you can, start a sexual relationship. It's okay too if it's someone you just like. You don't have to love them. I think that's not a good idea when you're suffering from postpartum depression. Okay, here's another one that I don't agree with now, but I thought it was really true then. It says, if there are special things your ex did for you, list them from the smallest to most important. Then beginning with the easiest, think of some way to get what you need by yourself. If it's love, get a puppy or a plant. If it's sex, I'm not going to say what they said to buy. If it's money, earn or borrow some. If it's repair work, hire someone. Because you haven't been getting all these things, whatever they were from your ex, you've been feeling deprived. Anyway, it goes on, and it's some of it was good things, like not following your ex's car or watching for it all the time, which I really couldn't do because I didn't drive. But what I'm trying to say is that if a self-help book or any other kind of trashy book is helping you with a bigger problem, it's not trash. It's something you need at the moment. And even though at a later date, and you believed everything they told you, if it helps you at the moment, I don't think that you can call it, well, you might call it trash, but you need it. So, and you know, I don't read many newer self-help books, but even in a book that's that was a really good book, Apartment Therapy, it shows you how to create a home that works for you physically, emotionally, and spiritually by Maxwell Gillingham Ryan. And he got really rich. He has a website where they sell a lot of things for apartments. But, you know, he has things like let your apartment talk to you, listening to your apartment, and it's very similar to the letting go. You have a 10-week plan. You have a 10-week plan here on making your home, you know, like you're going to be well mentally if you have a well house, which might be partially true, but it's not the whole story. And just like in letting go, if you do every single thing on this book, you might feel better, but some of these things might make your life worse. Anyway, for Garbaugust, I do have a book, and I did buy it recently. And it has a sort of kind of things that Olly was talking about that makes a trashy book. So in the Perry Mason case of the lame canary, I used to collect Perry Mason books. I had all of them. And for some reason in my 20s, they made me happy. So I didn't think they were trash. Earle Stanley Gardner was a lawyer. And of course, he's there was a television series, movies, and everything, you know, of his cases. And I don't know if I've read this before, but I read in a review that this is one of his best cases, and it's the case of the lame canary. And I paid, I'm not going to tell you how much I paid for it, because it's more than $5. It would be a lot of money because it's not in the greatest condition. It's not a first, but look at this cover. It has a poor duck, a canary, not a duck, and there's a knife in a box. He has, or she has, a bandage on their leg. So it's an animal. It's got a knife in it, in the cover. And so what is it about? I'm not going to read much. It just says it was a divorce case. And Perry Mason never took divorce cases. So that's all I'll read about that. But yes, I did buy this. And if it's trash, so be it. But I'm going to enjoy reading it, along with other books that I'm reading that are in Garbaugust books. And so I don't know if you got anything out of this little response video. but I just felt that I wanted to respond to not only Olly's 5 lessons that he learned, but also, you know, the discussion of what is trash, what isn't trash. I said in a prior video that, you know, some man's trash is another man's treasure, but there are books that are trash. But whether it makes you feel good or you want to buy it, that's another story, you know? So if you like this video, please subscribe and comment, and click that notification bell. And I'll be here a lot in August because it is my 72nd birthday, as well as my 2nd anniversary on BookTube. So I wish everyone a wonderful day. Aloha.